sitting down for writing out this message, I thought I had something. I was like, okay, this is going to be pretty good. This is pretty thorough. I'm happy with it. And looking at it now, it's like, okay, I see what I did, and I understand where I'm coming from. But now I feel like I'm probably the biggest hypocrite standing here talking about what I'm going to talk about. But I suppose we're all kind of in the same boat on that, just because we're all human. What I wanted to talk about was the word compromise. And maybe that word just kept coming to me because I'm compromising too much. Maybe it's somebody who needs to hear the word other than me. I don't know. It's probably both, honestly. But that's the word. It's just the thought of compromise. The thought of bending. You know, I remember when I first came here, I learned about Pastor's brother, Pastor Paul, did a book called True Christianity, and I think there was a lesson in the tree bending in the hurricane, and that, you know, you see the top of the tree is folding over almost to the point that it's touching the ground. But the roots of that tree are solid in the sand, and even if it is knocked over a little bit after some time, you see that tree start to kind of point back up, even from its bent over state. And there's a lot of meaning in that for our Christian walk. So the thought of it was, for me, that it doesn't give up, it doesn't die, it doesn't lose its footing, we'll say. It keeps doing what it's meant to do. So how do we as Christians compromise in life but still keep our faith and stay right with God? And the answer is we really don't, or we shouldn't be compromising. You know, we are leaders in our lives. We are leaders of our families. We are setting a standard because of God's standard. And so we are meant to be followed, not following. In the world, anyways. We're meant to be following God, obviously. So that palm tree, you think about it, that palm tree was there before the storm. The palm tree was there after the storm. So the storm isn't the permanent thing. It doesn't change because of the world around it. Its base is in the ground. It is grounded. It understands the world around it. Storms, like I said, are passing, and we are placed to be much more permanent than a storm or a trial. And yes, the top half will sway and move and get blown around a little bit, but when the storm passes, like I said, it's standing tall. Best example, and there's so many examples of people going through trials in the Bible. That's kind of the whole point of some of the stories. But I wanted to reference Daniel chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. It said, "And the king communed with them being Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Among them was found none like them. Therefore they stood before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in his realm." So I don't think this is a mistake, as nothing in the Bible is a mistake, obviously, but to see these four people, these four characters in these stories, to be of a different nation, to be of a different religion than where they got carried away to be held in the highest regard, to be 10 times smarter than anybody else in the kingdom. That's saying something. That's saying that their footing is correct. That's saying that their roots, even though they got technically uprooted away from Israel, from where they lived, and they got moved into Babylon, their roots were still strong. Many other people in that position would have looked at everything that was allowed to happen to them and come to the conclusion that God doesn't love me, God doesn't care about me, or he's not even there, he's not even real. It's easier to see what we see away from the unseen, to make our conclusions, to follow the easy path. Excuse me. We look for that easy explanation and quickly forego the truth. We always look for what's the easiest way to make me feel better. Instead of challenging ourselves, instead of doing the work and finding what God needs us to see. In John 8:44, Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees and to people who are challenging him, and he says specifically, I wanted to kind of take in the middle of there, he was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth. He's talking about the devil, about Satan, because there is no truth in him. And that's what I was just saying, was we need to search for the truth. We need to search for that good ground that will help us to not compromise. We fight that constant battle of inversion, and I've wanted to talk about this a couple times, and I'm never really sure how to bring it around. So this is my shot at it. There's a constant battle of inversion. Inversion. So what does that mean? The whole world is upside down. Constantly we are struggling to not be flipped on our heads like the rest of everyone else. God has ordained us from the beginning to be in a hierarchy of order. He made things in a certain sequence in the first chapter of Genesis. It was done purposefully. He didn't make the fish and then said, here's the sea. No, he had the sea, he had the air, he had the land, and he said, there's the fish, there's the things that crawl on the earth. Like I said, he didn't put the birds in the nothing and then say, here's some sky for you. That would have been backwards. It was done the way it was done on purpose. And it's done the same way in the creation of man. Let's see. Satan constantly wants to flip that order. He constantly wants the opposite of what God wants, because he knows if he can trick us into going with what he wants, he takes us away from God. In Genesis 1:28, he's speaking to Adam and Eve. It said, God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. To subdue it. That's the important part there. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that move upon the earth. So we are called to subdue the earth. We are called to bring it back into an order because it was thrown into a disorder. You plant a garden, and boy, oh boy, those weeds sure work really well all by themselves. You don't have to sow weeds. They just show up. That's the disorder. I planted a row of tomatoes, and now I have an oak tree growing in there. Well, where'd that oak tree come from? Well, that was from the chipmunks or the squirrel that had the oak tree down the road, and he came back with a nut in his mouth, and he put it in the ground there and forgot about it. And well, now I have an oak tree. I don't want an oak tree. I wanted a tomato. So pull the oak tree out, throw it away. Everybody's laughing because I know. It's just how it works. I watched my grandfather growing up. We had a nice little plot of land out in Harbor Creek and in the farm fields, and we'd go out every other weekend in the summer, go weed the corn. We planted all the corn, the nice long rows, 50-foot rows of corn, and he showed us this is what the weed looks like that grows up right next to the corn because it looks kind of like the corn. It's the same with the beans. It was the same with the beets. It was the same with so many different vegetables. They all have a look-alike, and they're just off. It's kind of like when we have the tares in a wheat field. You see those tares standing up perfectly tall when it's time to harvest, and all the wheat is bowed over. There's a message in that too. But back to the order that God is trying to set up here. Above mankind is God. Everything else that God created is below us. So he's constantly reminding the Israelites. We look in Leviticus and Josiah looks like he had to run away for something. I'm not quoting any verses just yet, but at the end of Leviticus, just about every chapter, and we just went back through it again in our nightly Bible readings. We're in Numbers now, but we did Leviticus, and at the end of every chapter I noticed he says that I am the Lord your God. So there's a set of rules, and I said it because I'm God. That's the big parent because I said so ending. And I looked it up real quick just in a quick little computer search. In Leviticus alone, he says, I am the Lord your God, or I am God, or I am the Lord, or something of that effect 45 times in that book by itself. But the devil, like I said, wants all of that backwards. We've talked about when Christ sat at the Last Supper and he passed out the bread and he said, this is my body. And now we have people, marching the streets going, well, it's my body, my choice, my body. Imagine that. It's the exact same phrase, my body, but it's so inverted because it's not. Because it is meant for evil. So the other inversion I point out here in my notes that I wanted to bring out was, the environmentalist movement. Now, it's just like every other evil thing that people come up with, is that it looks good, it sounds nice on paper, it's fantastic. Like I like to watch Star Trek sometimes, and it's just like, man, the utopia of this thing, it looks so good on the screen. It's never real. We don't have transporters and space travel yet, but the peace and there's no money, and we can just make food out of whatever. I don't know if that's ever going to be a thing. It looks good on paper, though, like I said. But the environmental movement, like I said in Genesis 1:28 there, we have to subdue the earth. It is ours to take care of. It is ours to not only control, not only to bring back into order, but to care for, to be a good steward of the land, of the animals. And I've taught that to my kids when we talk about removing the groundhogs that we had that were eating our beans. I said, the groundhogs think it's theirs, and I have to teach them that it's not. By removing them. And I try to do it in the most peaceful and, non-violent way, we'll say. But, that is the, I need to be a good steward. I need to make sure that this animal does not suffer, but I need to remove it. It's like, God loves you, but I love my beans, and I need you to go away. But that environmental movement, we've flipped everything, and now man is on the bottom. God is non-existent, because it's God, man, nature, right? Well, now it's nature. We worship Mother Nature, right? No. It's, they want nature. Man is the virus that is on this earth. That's what they'll tell you. And then God is non-existent because boy, that'd be really inconvenient for them. But that's just one of those simple things. It's just you see the opposite. They're calling for what sounds right, what sounds good, what sounds peaceable, we'll say, but it's wrong. It's flipped, and it just tastes wrong. Like you get that feeling in the back of your mouth. It's just like, it's just not right. So let's see. I've gone way off my notes now. I'm having fun though. The devil would have all these things backwards. He sows doubt within the first chapter of humanity. The prime example, like I said, was the environmental movement. Nature is in control, mankind is the problem, and God shouldn't exist. Well, that's just, that last phrase there, you get right at the end of it, and it's like, oh, there it is. A large part of the problem with the acceptance of this inversion is that they don't know, or they don't want to know, or love the truth. 2 Thessalonians, and this is where I wanted to bring in I'm trying to bring in Thessalonians into things I'm speaking on because, eventually we'll get there to Ethiopia because we're teaching Thessalonians. I'm hoping in January now. 2 Thessalonians 2:10 it says, "And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish because they received not the love of the truth that they might be saved." They received not the love of the truth. And I want to bring out just a couple more verses, and it might be a little bit rapid fire here, but this is kind of my finishing up end of it here. The first chapter of the Psalms, and I have the entire chapter pasted because it's only 6 verses in my notes here, but I wanted to just cover 2 and 3. I believe I put those in the queue there. Verse 2, it says, "But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper." So in verse 2, we see that word, the law. What does the law mean in this? It's the precepts and statutes of God. These are not just a set of rules. They are a set of rules, but they're not just a set of rules. They are a set of instructions, of teaching. They aren't just an arbitrary set of guidelines to be put in place because we're just bad, although that is part of the problem. It is instructions to a better way that we can grow closer to God. They have a firm foundation and not compromise. Hey, there's that word again. God calls us to be holy, to be set apart. Leviticus 20:26 says, "Ye shall be holy unto me." And he's talking to the Israelites because he wants them to follow all of these rules. "You will be set apart for me, for I, the Lord, am holy. I am the one set apart. I have severed you from other people that ye should be mine." And then it's repeated in 1 Peter. He actually quotes Levitical law here. 1 Peter 1:15 and 16, he says, "But as he which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation, because it is written, Be ye holy, for I am holy." This is why we can't compromise. This is why I'm standing before you, am the biggest hypocrite, because I feel like I compromise all the time. And, I get called out on it sometimes, and sometimes I just kind of slip on by. I don't know. But it's in the back of my head more and more that I can't compromise. I cannot give up the faith and the knowledge that I have, the rules that I know, because as I hold other people to those rules, it's going to be held to me that much more, especially standing behind this pulpit. And finally, in closing, we'll just bring out one more thing about the truth and what we should do with it. And that would be Proverbs 23:23. Buy the truth and sell it not. Also, wisdom, instruction, and understanding. All of those things are super important. Buy the truth and sell it not. So this is, I feel like maybe if he would have, don't sell it, but share it. Share the truth. You can share it, but don't profit from it off of other people, is kind of what that sounds like to me. You can buy it, you can obtain it, store it up, but also let other people know, because it's the next important job for us is, like, this is the truth, this is what I believe, and this is why I know it's right. And even if those people don't want to hear what you have to say, they'll still see that even in some of the hardest things that we have to go through, you're still prospering, you're still hopeful, you still have that testimony, because that's one of the biggest things the devil wants to take from us, right? What we have to say about God, what we have to say about Christ. He wants to take that away from us, and he wants us to say the wrong thing. He wants us to flip, just like the rest of the world. Amen.